Make sure this is working. There we go. All right. I'm going to try to do this without actually turning around. Oh, wait. Sorry. Sorry, John. I almost forgot. All right. So I'm going to finish up today with the boring stuff, sadly, the financial stuff. But one thing we really need everyone to think about is it's great to talk about building. It's great to talk about playgrounds. It's great to talk about taking down trees and all those other things. But all that comes down to what Pastor was talking about earlier. It's about money, right? We have to worry about how do we afford these things? Where are we going to get the money? What does that look like for the long term? So I'm going to talk about a couple things today. First of all, just a quick year-end review. In the voters meeting, I gave you what we thought the year-end was going to look like. The picture is a little different, so we're going to cover that real quick. Then we're going to talk about our current mortgage and what it would look like to start thinking about paying that off a little faster, maybe. As you all know, we have a little over a $2 million mortgage, and as we're thinking about other projects, I think one of the things we need to think about is what do we do about our current debt, right? Not just incurring more, but what do we do to pay that down? And then because we have that picture out here on the wall that shows a new sanctuary, which is not a architectural drawing, it's not actual plans, it's just a rendering, it's just a picture. But because it's been out there for so many years, I think since probably, I don't know, 20 years ago, it's old anyway. I want to talk a little bit about what it might look like to build a new sanctuary, just financially. This is an example. None of these numbers are set in stone. I'm going to explain some of the assumptions I made, but just to give you a sense of scale, what is this really going to cost us? And then I'll leave some room for questions at the end. So I know this is kind of small, and I apologize for that. But this is a slide that we showed in the last voters meeting. As you can see for the Academy, we expected a nearly $350,000 surplus. That was based on a lot of assumptions, and we knew we were making those assumptions at the time. The thought was that with all of the income coming in for June, for the following fiscal year for the Academy, that we would have a huge surplus. Turns out we didn't really understand how that money was going to come in. What instead happened was we ended up with about a $200,000 surplus. Still phenomenal, right? Still amazing. But the reason for that is, well, there are many. One is some people signed up to pay annually, to pay in June, and then went, oh, I don't want to do that. Hold on a second. So we had to switch them to something else. So that money didn't come in when we thought it would. Some of this is because we thought that we had accounted correctly for the scholarship dollars that come in. Well, we had, except they don't come in June. They come in whenever the scholarship money comes in, and that hasn't happened in some cases yet. So some of that money that we were expecting in June has now come in this fiscal year. It just didn't for that fiscal year. That's all. So it's not that we're not going to get that money. It's not that $150,000 difference. We're still going to get that money. It's just going to come in this fiscal year, not at the end of the last one. So still in good shape. And even with a great deal of spending in June, as Mark prepared for this next school year, we still came in slightly under budget on the total expenses. Just one thing to note, that 26-27 income did represent about $185,000 in our prior fiscal year. So that's a pretty big number. And for those of you who can math it, most of our that $200,000 is the 26-27 tuition, right? So we did a really good job of really hitting the mark on expenses and income for 2025, 2026, and then the money that came in a little early because of the way we changed how we get that income for the school is what gives us that surplus in large part. All right, here's the view for the church. We expected a deficit. We knew that was very much a possibility and a reality. We had hoped it wasn't going to be significantly large. We predicted about $17,000. Unfortunately, because of some additional expenses and because our projections of income dropped a little bit in June, that happens. June tends to be a little slow. This is where we ended up. We're at about a $27,000 deficit for last fiscal year for the church side of our ministry plan. Now, that's not a good thing, right? Our expenses, as you can see, were right on track. We hit within $1,000, which is pretty phenomenal. But our income continues to come in just a little shallow compared to the expenses we incur. Our expenses are going up next year, which means, not to be too blunt about it, but as expenses go up, that means that we have to find a way for income to go up. In the church, that generally means offerings. There aren't a lot of other ways that we can earn money. We are finding other ways by investing our funds in various places and trying to earn money off of those. But something to prayerfully consider as we go forward is how we can continue to close that gap, especially in future years. I'm going to stop there because this is all I have for the last fiscal year. Any questions about that? No? All right. All right, so here's our mortgage. You saw this slide at the voters meeting if you were there, but big picture, I did update this based on the updated numbers. We have just a little over $2 million in our current balance. We pay just about $17,000 a month to cover the debt on that mortgage. That split, 67% Academy and 33% church. So the Academy covers 2/3 of that cost. We have an annual interest rate of just about 7%. So obviously, as you all know from your own mortgages, that means that a large portion of what we pay is interest, not principal, every month. We insure through the Wells CEF. They only offer 5-year adjustable rate mortgages. So that means every 5 years we have to renegotiate with them. That means this is not a 30-year, we just know what it is and that's what it's going to be. Every 5 years, and that comes up in 2029, we're going to have to renegotiate with them. We could end up with a higher rate. We could end up with a lower rate. There could be different terms. We could change the payment. All of this could be different in the future. We don't know, but that's where we stand today. So what does it look like if we pay this off? A couple of assumptions. Obviously, I'm not going to try to tell you what I think is going to happen with interest rates and everything else. That's not my specialty. So I'm just going to say, let's assume that we continue paying the same amount, the interest stays the same, and we don't make any additional payments going forward. We do make additional payments almost every year. Not a lot, sometimes hundreds of dollars, sometimes a few thousand, it depends on the year. But there are offerings that are made for debt reduction, and we do apply that to the mortgage. But if we do this, this is what our payoff schedule looks like. Don't worry, I just put that up for a visual. But this is the important information. I used calculator.net, went real simple, didn't try to do any accounting. I'm glad Randall's not here to tell me I did it wrong. But as you can see, if we paid roughly the same amount, we're going to be paying for another 210 months. That's 17 and a half years, is based on all what we have currently, another 17 and a half years of payments to pay off this loan that we have today. During that time, so going forward from here, starting in August, we would pay a total of a little over $3.5 million to cover a $2 million loan, right? Interest is a bear. That's not the word I wanted to say, but we're in church, so I'll say a bear. That's something that we need to consider, is that for every dollar we don't put toward the mortgage, we incur more and more interest that we have to pay on an ongoing basis, and this takes more and more money out of our pocket on an ongoing basis. So I'm not saying what the right answer is. I'm just saying that as we go into that September 12th meeting and we talk about all the fun things we want to do and where we want to spend money and what we want to build, we can't forget that we do have this debt. It is a little bit of an anchor, and we do have to decide what we do with that. Now, one of the things that we might want to discuss in September, maybe, I know I want to, is what if we wanted to pay this off faster? What if we don't like the fact that we're going to spend $1.5 million in interest in the next 17 years? So let's pay it off faster. So some assumptions. We're starting at a little over that $2,000 mark. I kind of rounded the numbers to make it a little simpler. Let's say we continue paying the same amount, and let's just use the current church income of about $300,000 as our starting point. So let's say we wanted to pay it off in 3 years. I know I'm starting at the most extreme end, but let's say we wanted to pay it off fast. Okay, just for fun, so you can see the numbers. So in those 3 years, we would already pay something on the order of about $215,000 in principal with our current payments. That leaves 1.84 million in principal left to pay off. So that means we have to pay over $600,000 a year in addition to that to pay off that loan. Now, school board, don't kill me. I just threw this in there as an idea. But let's say the academy could kick in something like $50,000 a year. I did some estimates just to say, maybe the academy could help. But the academy can't just raise its rates over and over again to generate more income, right? We can't ask the academy to find a way to just pay that $600,000, right? Where's that going to come from? Mostly it's going to need to come from the church. It's going to need to come from members. So even if the academy could find a way to kick in a little bit more, and for the school board and for Mark, that $50,000 is roughly what we expect as surplus based on our current year's ministry plan. That's all I took it from. That still means paying $560,000 a year that the church would have to generate to get rid of this loan in 3 years. That's almost double the church's ministry plan income for this year, right? So instead of $300,000 in offerings, we need to get to $900,000 in offering.
And that's all towards the mortgage, that's not covering
And that's just to pay the principal on the mortgage and nothing new, right? It's just to say we got to get rid of this thing because it's an anchor around our neck before we do anything else. That would be one way to think of this. Okay? But so let me ask you, how many of you would like to say today and commit to this? I'm going to take my offerings and triple them for the next 3 years. Anybody? Anybody? Levi? How about you? Yeah? Yeah. He could probably do it, yes. All right. Now, we can illustrate a bunch of different scenarios. We could say, well, what if we don't want to do it in 3? What if we want to do it in 4? That spreads our cost out. Now it's more like $400,000 a year. Or what if we want to do it, whoops, hit the right button, that helps. What if we want to do it in 5 years instead? Now we're down to about $300,000 a year. Well, that's only doubling our current offerings. Maybe that's closer to doable, or maybe there are gifts that could come in or other ways that we could find to fund this. You could go to 7 years, you could go to 10 years, you could say, what if we wanted to cut that 17 years in half, roughly, what would that look like? But the point is, we have a lot of options for what to do about our current debt that we need to consider as part of everything else that we're talking about, right? We can't just forget that we're paying this money and it is costing us a lot. It isn't helping really with anything. Yes, it allows us to do the ministry, but it also keeps us from doing other things because we're paying so much interest. All right, so I think I've beat that horse to death. So let's talk about a new sanctuary mortgage. And this is exclusive of whether or not we pay off our current mortgage faster or keep it the way it is or pay other projects and the money we need. This is just saying, what if we looked at that picture on the wall and said, we want to do that? And believe me, if the congregation says it, then the council is going to have to consider it, right? What if we said we want to do that? And then we get into talking about capital campaigns, right? Everyone knows what those are. They've been at churches where those have been done. We're not just going to go build a sanctuary without spending a few years raising funds for that. But let's say we just decided to build one next year. Just start. Let's just take a big loan and let's do that. We're estimating that to build just a church on that land would cost $6 million minimum. That covers the cost of moving utilities out there, all the site preparation, all the permits, all the planning, of course the building and everything else that we would need to do to build a new sanctuary. So $6 million. Let's say we could get a loan at 6.92%. Who knows, right? I don't know the answer to that one. I'm just using it because it was convenient because that's what we pay today on our current loan. This loan will not come from Wells CEF. Wells CEF cannot give us a loan of $6 million. That's not how they're set up. Wells CEF exists to support the growth of new churches. They want to give small loans to help new churches start, not big churches like where we're going, mid-sized churches. They don't have the kind of money to put that down. It's a danger for them. So let's say we found someone else and I just did this as a 30-year term. Whether or not that makes sense, I don't know, but just to give you an illustration. So there's a big ugly picture of a payoff schedule for that, but more importantly, here's what the monthly payment would look like. Hopefully you can read that in the green. It says about $40,000 a month. That $6 million loan would cost us $40,000 a month, and we would be paying on that for 30 years. In that 30 years, if we did nothing else, we would pay over $14 million for a $6 million loan, right? Must be nice to be a mortgage company. It's a lot of money. All right, so to give some perspective on that, $40,000 a month is $480,000 a year. That would be a 160% increase to what we collect in offerings today. So just like we talked about paying off our current mortgage faster, this is the same question. Are we prepared to increase our offerings by another 150%? If you're giving $1,000 a year right now, are you willing to commit to giving, what, $2,600? That's pretty big. Or if you're giving $10,000, it's $26,000. Are you ready to make that kind of commitment? Maybe the answer is yes. And maybe this is a great thing and we should be doing it and we should be finding ways and we should do capital campaigns, kind of raise a couple $1 million up front, have a smaller mortgage. Obviously, there's a lot of ways to do this. But the point is, as we're going into that meeting in September, where's your head at in terms of what you think you can help with, how you think finances should run here? Is this the way we should be spending our money? Because it will cost, right? Building a new building is not cheap. Now, you can take this same mentality and you can apply it to expanding the school. If we build onto the school, it's going to be the same thing, right? We're going to have to find a way to pay for that. Now, maybe the onus is a little bit more on the academy at that point to find ways to raise funds for that. but there's still going to be cost involved. We're still going to have interest. We're still going to have all these fees that we have to pay. If we decide to put in a new parking lot and that costs us $1 million, it's still the same thing, right? We still have $1 million thing that we have to cover. That either means we have to raise the money up front, we have to take a loan, whatever the case may be. But the point is, every choice we make has financial implications, and we do need to keep that in mind. And so what I want you to think about is, I'm not trying to browbeat you. I'm not trying to say we shouldn't build a new sanctuary. I'm saying, but as you think about where we're going, and as you prepare for that September 12th meeting, where's your head at when it comes to this will cost us money? And what is that going to mean, right? We have to temper our expectations enough to say, what's our purpose here and what best serves that purpose? How do we best use the funds that we do raise to serve that purpose? All right, just as a point of facts, I covered this at the voters meeting, but I'll do it one more time here. Yes, we do have a number of individual funds that are set aside specifically for building projects. Some of this came from gifts. Some of this came from sale of land to the city of Pooler for the expansion of Quaco Road. Some of this came from Georgia Power had to pay us a little bit of money for an easement. So we have quite a bit of money here. Between those 5 funds, $260,000. This is phenomenal, right? That's wonderful. That's an amazing thing to have in our back pocket. But I just showed you a $6 million loan. That $260,000 doesn't change the story very much, right? It's not a big difference. It might make a big difference to a project like building a parking lot or taking down the trees or whatever the case may be. So it's great to have those funds. It's a great place to start. It's a good nest egg, but it's not going to be the thing that gets us to a place of building all new buildings and big projects, right? It's just a wonderful place to start. And I mean, I want to point out again, I said this at the voters meeting, you can see some of the other numbers on the screen here. We have all these other savings funds. We have over $200,000 in savings that's sitting there. That's phenomenal too, right? How many churches can say they have that backup sitting in their accounts that they don't have to touch? Although we did recently. You might remember at the voters meeting, I mentioned we took $15,000 out of savings to cover the cost of fixing our HVAC again. Not again, I mean replacing or whatever. Greg's gonna have words with me afterwards for saying that. But it's still amazing that here we are and we have this money and we can do these things and we can make things work, and the academy is thriving and the church is thriving and we have new people coming in. So this is all wonderful stuff. So maybe the answer is God will provide, and let's make good decisions, good stewardship decisions, but God will provide. Yes, still, we have to think about these things as we go forward. That's it for me, unless there are any questions.
No questions.
Oh, no. Okay. All right, Jesse does not have a question, as it turns out.
Jesse gets one question.
I was just curious, so the church has the 20 whatever deficit for last year, so does that just roll over, or do we use some of the savings to like zero that out? And you can answer that.
It's the question, Jesse, and I think it's a great one for all the church members to hear. What do we do about that? What do we do about the fact that we came up a little short? The answer is, we're basically just saying we don't have to collect that additional money because we have that money sitting in the bank account. But not to put too fine a point on it, but in the interest of transparency, just about every single dollar that's sitting in our bank account today is academy surplus, right? When the church does not meet its priority, its plan, does not have enough income to cover its own expenses, every dollar, we have $340,000 in our bank account today. Every one of those dollars, essentially, is academy surplus from the past 5 years. So the way that we cover that $27,000 is we just go like this and say, well, we had money in the account, so it's okay. Whether that's the right story going forward, whether we have to do something different formally, obviously I think might not be a bad thing for the school board to have some thought about. I think they do already, and certainly the council is going to have to think about that. But we cannot get to a place where we have to start pulling that out of savings, because then we're about 5-6 years before we run out of savings, and then what? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to cut it off there.